It's time for a lightning round. Welcome to Giant Cocktails, a podcast where two lifelong fans talk about the San Francisco Giants while drinking homemade cocktails. Now, here are your hosts, Ben and Matthew Henry.
Hello, cocktail connoisseurs and baseball aficionados. Welcome to Giant Cocktails Midweek Review. I'm your host, Matthew Henry, your no-nonsense guide to the world of grand slams and garnishes. And joining me is the illustrious Andrew Baggarly, Grand Scribe of the Dugout Chronicles and Imperial Mixologist of the Diamond Elixir. Whether he's wielding a baseball bat or a cocktail shaker, he's here to sprinkle stats and spirits into your week with flair. Grab your favorite drink and settle in. It's time for some boozy banter and baseball brilliance. Cheers! And welcome, Andrew Baggarly, Grand Scribe of the Dugout Chronicles.
Thank you. It's nice to be on, and that is quite the introduction. So thank you to ChatGPT for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, nothing but the best for our guests.
Wait.
What?
Wait. I have a question.
Oh, you're here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh.
Am I being replaced?
I was going to get to that later, but
Right. You're going to replace me with Andrew Baggarly.
Of course I would replace you with Andrew Baggarly. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. That's probably, I mean, there's worse people to be replaced by. That is for sure. But welcome to the show, Andrew. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be on with you.
Yes, for our listeners, as promised, we weren't lying. Andrew Baggarly, writer from The Athletic, is here today. Giants beat writer for The Athletic is here to join us today. And we are going to talk, well, I think the plan was originally, Matthew, to talk mostly about the Giants. But we've been talking to Andrew a little bit before we started the recording, and Andrew's a cocktail guy. This whole episode might just be all about cocktails.
If the cocktail writing paid, maybe he'd be a cocktail writer instead of a baseball writer.
I think cocktail writing can pay. I see their books out there anyway.
Well, speaking of books, Andrew, you've got a couple of books you've written. Maybe your next book could be about cocktails.
I won't lie. I've actually thought about that. The problem is I'll make something and I won't write it down. And so I'm not good at replicating. And that's pretty much true with everything in my life. If I do something well, I really was disorganized and didn't take notes, don't know what's in it, and can't ever make it again. So I guess I'm embracing the ephemeral nature of our existence by doing that. But I could make more money, I guess, if I actually make some good stuff and can repeat it and put some recipes in a book. It'd be fun. But no, mostly I just like dabbling around and throwing stuff together and seeing what works.
Right.
So that's the fun part.
Yeah, dabbling around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mr. makes his own Nespolino out of his Loquat, his locally grown Loquat. By locally grown, I mean in his yard.
Oh no, I've got all kinds of stuff. I don't have I don't live on like acreage or anything, but we've got a lot of edibles and botanicals in my backyard. My ultimate goal is I want to make my own Amaro using 21 ingredients that I only get from my backyard. And I figured out some aspects of it, but yeah, it's definitely a work in progress.
I mean, that's a good goal.
As far as the bitter part, how are you going to make that work?
Oh, well, doesn't everyone have gentian root just lying around and cinchona bark? And no,
I got it. Yeah. Don't you have a cinchona tree in your backyard? I mean, everybody does, right?
Right. Yeah. So I actually am trying to do the bitter element we've got some rue, which has a real bitter flavor to it. Some Australian mint, which is sort of camphor-y. And then I'm using young artichoke leaves. And that seems to be getting halfway there, but there's still something missing. I need something with a little more bite. And so I don't quite have that yet, but we're working on it.
All right. All right. Well, why don't we get into our cocktails and then we'll start talking giants. Ben, do you want to lead us off? What are you drinking today?
Well, today, Matthew, I am drinking a cocktail that I am going to call the Logan Webb Punch in honor of Andrew's article where he brought up the Logan Webb Punch.
I love it. What's in it?
And I did a little bit of research on Logan, and I found out that he likes Red Bull and Cheez-Its crackers.
Where is this going to go?
I took that as inspiration, and then I decided, nah, I'm just going to wing it. And so basically, this is just a riff on the Fish House Punch. And so what it has in it is 1 ounce of dark rum. I'm using Smith & Cross Overproof. And then it has 1 ounce white rum. I'm using 3 Stars Plantation. And then it has 1 ounce of cognac. I'm using Kirkland's Finest. And half an ounce of an apricot liqueur from Giffard that is in French, and I'm not going to try to pronounce. And then I added to that to dilute it. I did not shake this with ice. Instead, I diluted it with cold Earl Grey black tea.
Ooh.
And then I have paired that with 3 Luxardo cherries because that is the minimum amount for any cocktail on this show. And that's what I'm drinking today, the Logan Webb Punch. And there's also, an ounce of lemon juice and an ounce of simple syrup.
That sounds fantastic.
It does.
Great a little nutmeg on top of that.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. And this is by the way, now that you mentioned that, this is a cocktail that you could actually serve warm as well as chilled. So it's very, very versatile. And you can also, it's pretty strong. So if you wanted to dilute it a little bit extra, you could. And that's what I'm drinking. The Logan Webb Punch.
It'll put you on the ground, just like one of Logan Webb's sinkers.
That's right. That's right. Everything on the ground. There you go. That's the tie-in. That's why Andrew's on the show. There it is. We've needed a writer all along, Matthew.
Clearly.
That's what it is.
That's what I do. I say clever things with words, and they pay me money.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It beats real work.
Sure does. All right. So that's a good segue into mine because I took inspiration from your article when you said Webb's four-seamer is like having Benedictine in your liquor cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
When used in moderation and in the right context, it can be an essential ingredient. And so I couldn't agree more. And the most famous, I think, or most well-known cocktail I think that uses Benedictine is a cocktail called the Vieux Carré.
Mm.
And it has rye and cognac and sweet vermouth and Benedictine. And so I'm doing a little riff on that I'm calling the Carribean Carre. And I'm subbing out the cognac for white rum. So this one has 1 ounce of rye whiskey, an ounce of white rum, an ounce of sweet vermouth, a 1/4 ounce of the aforementioned Benedictine, and then 2 dashes of orange bitters and 2 dashes of Angostura bitters. And you're going to stir that in a mixing glass with ice. Pour it into a chilled rocks glass with some fresh ice, preferably a large cube, and spritz a little orange peel over it and drop the peel into the drink. And you get this nice, the rum kind of comes to the forefront and definitely gets this. It's a nice cocktail that gives you a little bit of herbalness with the Benedictine and the orange. You could make it a little bit more if you want to lean into the Caribbean thing, you could sub out chocolate bitters for the Angostura bitters if you wanted to. But today I'm doing Angostura. So that's what I'm drinking today, the Carribean Carre.
That sounds fantastic. Both of those sound really good.
Yeah, well, and
those would both jump out at me. If I'm looking at like a menu at a restaurant with about 8 or 10 specialty cocktails, I would order either one of those. Those would be the ones that would pop out to me. Those both sound fantastic.
See, folks, we know what we're talking about. 3-time Jeopardy champion Andrew Baggarly says so.
So what are you drinking, Andrew?
All right. So this is what I whipped up. And as I mentioned, I have a Loquat tree that is going absolutely bonkers. It's in my front yard. And if you want to walk by my house and pick Loquats, you can pick as many as you like because we have enough for the whole neighborhood. And as I mentioned, I make this liqueur It is an Italian liqueur. In Italy, they call it Nespolino. And I believe that the word for Loquat is Nispero in Italian. It's also called Japanese Medlar. It's called a lot of different things in different Asian languages. But the fruits, you never see them really commercially because they don't have a long shelf life. They're really, they have a lot of water in them. They bruise real easily. But the flavor is kind of like almost like tart apricot-y, it's not citrusy at all. It's if you juice it gets brown real fast, kind of like apple juice, and there is an appley quality to it. So, but the seeds have a really high cyanide content of amygdalin, which is basically your body will turn it into cyanide if you chew up the seeds and eat them. So you don't want to eat like a big pile of loquat seeds. However, they are great for getting that sort of bitter almond cherry flavor if you steep the seeds for a few months in a neutral spirit. So that's what I do. I buy a crap ton of vodka from Costco. They probably are worried about my liver when I check out with like 6 of those big bottles. And so I'll have it sit underneath my stairs for about 3 or 4 months, and then I'll make a simple syrup with a few other sort of spices that I'll steep in there, a little vanilla, a little cinnamon, things like that. And then I'll back sweeten it. And then I've got this nice liqueur. You can sub out Amaretto and it's not quite the same, but it's acceptable. And also if you don't have loquat juice on hand, because who does, you can use apple juice. Apple juice is close enough. So this is a cocktail that's got 1.5 ounces of bourbon. I'm using 4 roses, a half ounce of Nespolino or Amaretto, 2 ounces of loquat juice, or you can sub in apple juice, half an ounce of lemon juice, a dash of, I'm using allspice bitters, but anything that gives you a little bit of spice, and then just shake it up and serve it up. And I was going to stick 1 Luxardo cherry at the bottom and sink it, but now I know it's a 3 cherry minimum. We'll put 3 down there.
Yep.
And I'm calling this one the Quattro Rosas, and that the quat is for loquat. Quattro Rosas is 4 roses in Italian, and that's the bourbon I'm using. So that's the cocktail I invented.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm impressed.
I'm going to go out to my loquat tree and make it right now.
Hey, they're in season. They're in season right now.
Do they just drop fruit everywhere and then you have to do something with them because otherwise it's just a mess?
They actually, but they don't make a huge mess. Like we have 3 plum trees, and they're little Asian plums. They're like cherry plums. And those make a mess. And the raccoons come and they find it and they crap all over my yard. And so I have to pick those up every day when they're dropping. But the loquats, they basically, once they drop, the sun, bakes them out right away, and they just turn into, little discs, and they go away. So they don't make a big goopy mess like the plums do. And I have, by the way, I've tried making my own wine with the plums. I like it. Most other people don't. It got a little hot. Okay. I think it's about maybe between 19 and 21%.
Wow, that is very hot.
It's real hot. So
sounds fine to me.
Yeah, I don't see the problem.
So I'll basically what I'll do is we'll make a spritzer with it. I'll just put in a little lemon juice and club soda over ice, make a long drink out of it, and that's a nice thing we do. Honestly, I just needed to get rid of the plums, do something with them. So one year I decided, hey, I'm going to try to make wine. So I did.
Awesome. All right, Matt, why don't you tell us what we're doing today?
Yeah, so let's get into it. So today is Thursday, May 9th, as we record this podcast. We usually do Wednesdays, but Thursdays work better for everyone's schedule. The Giants are 17-21. They've gone 2-1, though, since our last recording. One loss was obviously the finish of the sweep against the Phillies, where the young Mason Black made his major league debut. And then we've gotten 2 out of the first 2 wins in Colorado. So we are recording before Thursday's game. So that is still to be determined. But we're hoping for a sweep because the Giants desperately need it.
Well, here's the good news, Matthew. The Giants are better than the Colorado Rockies. It's a low bar. It's a low bar. But at least we're better than somebody.
Research confirms.
Exactly. Research confirms Giants better than Rockies.
That's right. And so what are we talking about today? Well, of course, we have our guest, Andrew Baggarly. And so there are some questions that we have for him around just what it's like being a beat writer and what it's like to be around the Giants. I think as fans, we often wish that we had the access that Andrew has and maybe some of the insight and background. So we'll ask him a little about that and his career. But then, of course, we're going to talk Giants. Particularly, we're curious about maybe some player development with the Giants and kind of how that has been at the forefront over the last few seasons, especially since Farhan Zaidi took over as president of baseball operations. And then today, Andrew also had an article today out about Jung-Hoo Lee, and so thought maybe we'd ask him a little bit about Jung-Hoo Lee and his introduction into the Giants and Major League Baseball. And then what Andrew doesn't know is that we usually finish with a lightning round, where we just do real quick kind of our thoughts on some topics. And this week's is going to be lightning round, the Andrew Baggarly edition. So it'll just be Andrew's quick thoughts on a few different topics and since he's a Jeopardy champion, we figured we didn't need to prep him ahead of time on this one.
That would be cheating, in fact.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer in the
I'll
form of a question, though. So there's at least that.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that I don't drink 3 of my cocktails before the lightning round. That would probably.
No, that's actually how we do it on the show, Andrew. I mean, that's the show, man. That's the show.
Yeah, the takes get bigger and bigger as the episode goes on. So
you're lucky this is the shorter version. The Monday show, the big show. That's really where the angry drunken rants come out.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm ready for anything. So let's go.
All right. Well, I thought we could talk first of all about your job. You kind of, to I think a lot of Giants fans who don't know better, you have a dream job. Your job is to watch baseball and write about it. Now, I know that writing for a deadline sucks, and so that's like a job I would never want. My brother knows that I'm horrible with deadlines and could possibly just never. But I thought we could talk a little bit about what your life is like as a baseball writer, especially one who covers a specific team, right? You're on the Giants beat. You cover them day to day. Like, I guess the question that I have is like, what level of access do you have to the team that maybe a Giants fan wouldn't know about? Like, how close to things are you really? Like, I know they hold you guys at bay, and probably some of them don't like the media, but certainly you're closer than we are. Like, what do you think would surprise a fan about the kind of access that you have?
It's an interesting way to frame the question. I mean, our actual access, our actual clubhouse time, I mean, it's changed a lot in the time I've done this job. First year I covered the Giants was in 2004. And back then you could be in the clubhouse for 3.5 hours prior to every game. You didn't have to have a reason to be in there. You could just be in there for 3.5 hours. And, guys would come and go and they'd take batting practice and then they'd come back after batting practice. And now it's basically down to 50 minutes is what we have in terms of pregame time. And a lot of times the teams are holding meetings or, it's guys are not necessarily guaranteed to be in the clubhouse during that time. Right. And the PR staff does try, I think, to schedule our access or which access window we have around when, there's no meetings going on. We are working with MLB to try to, codify this so that the teams can't because there's so much prep now that goes into every game. There's so much data. There's so many meetings. Right. I mean, there's fewer meetings now under Bob Melvin than there was under Gabe Kapler. That was just meeting central. But yeah, it's harder to sort of have FaceTime with players than it was. But I'll tell you what, I also learned a lot during COVID when we literally could not go in the clubhouse at all. I'm fortunate. I've covered the team a long time. I have, relationships where, if I need Logan Webb, I can text him, and he'll probably get back to me because he's a, good dude, Brandon Crawford.
I can't do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I'm able to talk to guys outside of that window sometimes, or if I need to check with them on something, or if I just want to, sometimes you just want to go in the clubhouse and say, hey, when's a good time that we can sit down and really have an in-depth conversation, and you sort of make an appointment for later. But that's the thing. I mean, some people would call me an access journalist. I mean, that's what I am, and there's a little bit of a pejorative that goes with that. Like you can't be honest in your reporting because you have to answer to these people and you rely on their access to do your job. It's like, well, yeah, there is some measure of truth in that. You can't just, be unfair or rip people or, be unprofessional. You have to answer for what you write. And, I think that if it's critical, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you can't write it because these guys know if they don't perform, That's why they're getting paid a lot of money. They're going to be, criticized and held to account. But it's a situation where as long as you're a professional and as long as you're fair, then I don't worry about that part of it. And the access, that being an access journalist is what I am, because I'm allowed to ask the questions of players that I would imagine fans would want to ask. And so, that's kind of my job, is to be that conduit. And it's changed definitely a lot over the years. The job has changed. I used to go on every road trip. Now I go on maybe half, depending on what my travel budget is. I was in Boston, I was in Philadelphia. I didn't go to Colorado. I'm back home. I won't be on the next trip to Pittsburgh, New York. I will be on the trip after that to Arizona and Texas. So, that makes things a little bit tougher sometimes. But, like you said, it's a job where I get to watch baseball and write about baseball. And you lose sight of that sometimes. But like the other day, we're in Boston, we're in Fenway Park. I'm in the press box by myself. I'm looking out at the green monster and everything, and I'm like, "This is pretty cool." You definitely have those moments where
I knew it.
where you sort of remind yourself that I get to do something pretty neat.
I knew it. See, it's the dream job, Matthew.
It is.
It's the dream job.
It is, except for that deadline thing. Yeah.
Okay. No, you're right. It's like having homework for the rest of your life. It's the worst. I don't know what I'm thinking. It's the worst job.
Andrew, I do have a question for you that's kind of important, and I've been wondering a lot. And I subscribe to The Athletic and been reading your articles, and I always hit the awesome button. But how detrimental is it to your career if I were to hit the meh button?
I would get a phone call and that would be it. I'd be given a box of my belongings. And,
this is one meh.
Yeah, I think it's 5 mez in a week, and that's it. You're done.
Right.
Yeah. So I've had people actually put in the comments, is like, hey, I wanted to give this an awesome, and I accidentally hit the meh button, and I'm really concerned about that. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. They're not going to dock my pay. Just thank you for being here. So yeah, I think that they just put it there because it gives people like a sense that they're being heard, and that I probably shouldn't say this, but it's probably more there for you than it is for me. I don't think they really use it a whole lot they used to, but since they implemented that, the company's been sold, obviously, from sort of a VC funded startup to now a profit making arm of a very, very large media company. So I don't know if they really use that data as much as subscriber engagement, how many views it's getting. They want subscribers to be getting value out of their subscription, and they want engagement, and that's the best way that they can sort of gauge whether people are getting value out of their subscription. So that's important to them. It's important to me, and I don't want to write something and no one reads it. That just tells me I didn't really hit on something that people want to read about. So I don't think that really matters too much, though. If you hit the meh button, don't feel too bad.
All right, but on that note, what listeners want to hear about, I've been thinking about that, Andrew, and I've got an idea for you. Okay. So Wilmer Flores, obviously, he's infamously known for, or I don't know how real this is, but apparently he learned English by watching the show Friends. That's kind of the story that us fans have heard over and over again. And obviously his walk-up song is the theme to Friends. And so I feel like you could do a whole article on what character does Wilmer Flores identify with most, and does he agree that Ross and Rachel were on a break? I think those are some hard-hitting topics that might be informative for Giants fans.
So I don't know the answer to number 2, but I do know the answer to the first one. It's Joey, and Joey is his character. He has cleats that say "How you doing" on the back of him. So I'm pretty sure it's Joey. Yeah, no, he does. He has Friends cleats that he wears all the time. And I did ask him what he thought about the reunion special, and he said that he did actually cry. He shed a tear. So yeah, no, he legitimately loves Friends. He loves it. He'll just watch it all day, even though he's seen them all. Again.
Well, he better. It's his walk-up song.
It is, and he's not changing it. So
no, he's not changing it. It has not changed in a long time. No,
and you're gonna know he's in a really, really bad slump if he starts changing his walk-up music, because he loves that song.
Yeah. So Ben, you had a question about stats.
Oh, right. Yes. So, okay. So now we're going to segue here into talking about the San Francisco Giants in detail. But one of the things that I always marvel at in your articles, or really, I mean, most sports writers' articles, but yours especially, taking the one about Jung-Hoo Lee, is just all of the statistical analysis that you've done. And my question for you is, do you have like some go-to stats when you're assessing a player or a team? Like if the Giants are going to go play a team that they don't normally face, is there something that you just go look at really quickly to get a sense of how a player or a team is doing?
Probably the standings.
Nothing like wins and losses, right?
Yeah. No, it's an interesting question. I mean, like, there were a couple comments below my Lee story that was like, this had way too many numbers in it. This is boring. I don't want to read about stats. And it's like,
Sure.
Well, yeah, but there were a lot of questions about whether this guy, Jung-Hoo Lee, how he would perform against high velocity pitching. And
True.
There's so much that you can find now, whether it's on Baseball Savant, it's just all the StatCast data, or on Fangraphs or in Baseball Reference, I use a lot. You can look at splits every which way. And yeah, you definitely can get caught, looking at the trees for the forest, but
right.
And there's a lot of confirmation bias, and let me find the stat that shows what I think I'm seeing. Oh, here it is, and there are other stats that you could use that might, lead you to a different conclusion. But, I wanted to see what he was doing against fastballs 95 plus, and I can look that up. I can sort for that. And he has a 3% swing and miss rate. It doesn't mean that he's, slugging 600 against those pitches, but he's not overmatched by them at all. In fact, quite the opposite. And that was one thing that was a legitimate question among scouts, how he would handle. And so I can show you a stat that basically says, look, he's doing okay. He's not exactly, being a difference maker in terms of his overall offensive output, but he's competing and he's learning and he's making adjustments. And, he's got all this stuff being thrown at him. And you know what? He's doing okay. So, and the news peg here is that they wanted to meet with him. They wanted to tell him that, that's
right.
And that's something that, you didn't know that. No fans knew that. That's not something they talk about on the broadcast. And that's where I can come in and give you a little bit of background. And are they concerned about the fact that he's sitting there with basically a 300 on base? When everyone thought he might be the new Ichiro or something. Well, first of all, he wasn't going to be that. And second of all, no, they're not freaked out. They're not going to take him out of the leadoff spot. They're really happy with what he's doing, and they think that they're willing to be patient and know that he's going to make more of an impact over time. So that was sort of why those stats were in that story. And I think that's just part of almost like showing your work. It's part of my job is to use statistics. Part of my job is to talk to people and who have been around a long time and get what they're seeing and what they're thinking. And that's, you sort of blend all that together. And sometimes there's a narrative and you find yourself chasing a narrative and looking for things that can provide that confirmation bias. But if you're going at it from an intellectually honest point of view, which I always try to do, not fool myself, then, sometimes you look at the numbers and they show you something completely different, and then you can write that too.
Right. So Matthew, we wanted to talk, I think since we're already on the topic of Jung-Hoo Lee, I think we should just keep moving there. We want to talk specifically about the Giants' offensive struggles, and Jung-Hoo Lee was part of that, and we had a bunch of questions related to him, and since we're already on the subject, I figured we could just keep going with those. You talked about your article. In your article, you wrote about how they wanted to pull him aside, right? The story that you told was that they wanted to pull him aside and have a specific meeting with him where they talked about what the numbers said versus the results, right? And I mean, even as a fan, I have seen, right? Like, I can see that the guy's getting robbed. I can see that he's hitting the ball really hard, but every time he's hitting it to the wrong part of the park that he happens to be in, right? Like, at least for me as a fan, like I'm still a believer in Jung-Hoo Lee on the offensive side. I think on the defensive side, he has been way above advertised. But so my one question for you, though, is it made it sound like it was this one big event where they had been waiting and then suddenly they dropped all of this on him. And I guess this is kind of why we asked about, like, how much access do you have to a team? My question is like, how much are they integrating with these guys on a day-to-day basis? Like, does he not know these sorts of things already? I know maybe this was kind of like a big special show so that they could really focus on him. But Are they not doing these things day to day?
No, I think they are. But the way that Pat Burrell, the Giants hitting coach, described it to me was, look, we talk every day. We communicate. We go over stuff, but you do have that language barrier, and they
Right.
have a full-time interpreter for him. But this is a guy who is probably wondering, hey, what do they think about me? And so they wanted just to make sure that there was no, I guess, misconception or confusion at all. They didn't want him to, as Burrell put it, if he's comfortable, he's going to be okay. He's going to perform. He's going to get better. He's going to be a good player for us. But we want to make sure that he feels comfortable, and
Right.
wanted him to have the comfort of knowing that we are thrilled with what he's doing. And so I think you just make that extra special point. It wasn't like it was a big, huge show, big, huge presentation. It was just, hey, look, let's have this little extra moment off to the side. Here's some of these expected numbers for what you should be doing. It's
Right.
obviously your actual numbers. Don't worry about them, because we know that you're performing better than those numbers. We know you're figuring a lot of stuff out as you go. And so we're here to help you. And I think that was just it. And that's coaching 101. That's what good
Sure.
coaches do.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to kick somebody in the butt, and this is not one of those times. This is one of the times where you pat them on the butt and or whatever I don't know. Is that maybe that would be kind of weird. That's an American thing. Maybe they just pat him on the back.
I do have a question on that, not on patting people on the butt, but really about language barriers. And the Giants do have some players that speak obviously Korean and Jung-Hoo Lee and Spanish, and someone like Jorge Soler that maybe not their first language. Does that become a barrier to communicating with players around their development?
So I think teams have done a lot better job of having Spanish speakers on coaching staffs. The Giants even have one of their analysts, Mario Ferretti. He is a native Spanish speaker as well. And so, they could just make sure that everyone's got the same access to the same coaching and the same information. I think that that's a lot better than it used to be, where Roberto Clemente would come over and, oh, you're Bob now. We're going to call you Bob. It definitely is, I think, a lot better than it used to be, for sure, even 10 years ago. So, but it's, you have to recognize that. You have to make that extra effort, to make sure that everyone's got the same access to the information, because, there's so much information that's so different than it used to be. And players, I think, are realizing that they are valued in ways that are different than they used to be valued. And they got to know what they've got to be good at and what teams value, because if they do those things well, then that's how they're going to get paid. So, I think it's been a point of emphasis in a lot of organizations. The ones that do it well, I think, do it really well. And there's always room to get better.
Switching gears to the player development side, we as fans have been, especially since Farhan Zaidi took over, and there's been a lot of emphasis on their draft. A couple drafts, they went pitcher heavy. So, we're starting to see some of those results as some of those players, like, obviously like Mason Black, who we saw on Monday making their major league debut. Guys like Ryan Walker, who has been a revelation in the bullpen. It seems like the Giants have done a pretty good job at developing pitching, but still seem to be struggling a little bit on the hitter side. How much of a player development thing is it talent versus and luck kind of play into that? Or are the Giants needing to look at how they develop hitters? What is your thoughts on that?
Are the Giants bad at player development for offensive players, Andrew? That's what we want to know. That's what I want. Do they suck? Because it feels like they suck, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's boy, yeah. You look at an organization like the Orioles, and they had so many high draft picks, and they had that sort of tanking era where they could get those kinds of players, the Jackson Holidays and the Gunnar Hendersons and the Kjærstads, and the Giants haven't had those kinds of picks. And the one time they did have a super high, or the two times really that they've had like a top 10 or top 15 pick, and they used it on a position player. Let's see. I mean, you go back to Patrick Bailey, Hunter Bishop, and then Joey Bart. And so, basically one of those players is still with them and looks like he could be their catcher for a long, long time, and is a pretty good two-way player. So, I mean, the draft is just the most inexact science that there is. I think that there's a little more certainty when you take pitching, because you have all the metrics that can show you, just how much ride they have on their fastball, the velo, obviously the spin rates, and then it's a matter of keeping them healthy and having to further develop their ability to land those pitches for strikes. But there's a little more certainty in the development, less certainty with health with pitching, more certainty with just like, what you have and what you can develop. With hitting, there's just, you just never quite know what you're going to get. It's really, really difficult. I think nobody in baseball, if anyone tells you they have the answer, they're lying. And you're right. The Giants, I think, the Hunter Bishop pick has not worked out. He's back and hitting at Double-A and healthy. So good for him for getting back on the field. That's step one. But you're right. When you take 9 of your first 10 picks are pitchers in one draft, and then you do it again, a year or two later, you're going to have a lot of inventory of pitching in your system and not a lot of position player inventory. And some of their international bets that they've made on hitters have not worked out as well. I mean, Gustavo Cabrera is even no longer with us. It's so sad. He passed away. You got Angel Villalona. You got Rafael Rodriguez. And so many guys that they've given $1 million bonuses to have just never even made it out of A balls. So that's a big part of it too. And then a lot of that goes back to previous administrations as well. So you can't really point to anyone and say it's your fault that the Giants don't have more hitters. But there's no question that is what fans want to see. They want to see everyday star player. They want to see, somebody who can be the next Buster Posey, the next Barry Bonds. And, the Giants have gone out and they tried to get Shohei Ohtani. They tried to get Aaron Judge. They tried to get Carlos Correa, and they haven't been able to sign those players. And, so you've got to develop them. And that's going to be, when the Giants are ready to really compete with the Dodgers year in and year out for the division is when they get to the point where they can start developing those players, introducing them successfully to the big leagues and turning them into stars. And that's a hard thing to do. It really is. And they just haven't been able to crack that code yet.
Right. Well, one thing I will tell Giants fans, if you have been frustrated by the San Francisco Giants this year, do not by any means go look to Richmond for solace.
Yeah.
I was looking at I was trying to find some silver linings, Andrew. I was trying to find some good stories, like when I was really down in the dumps, as at the end of the Philadelphia series, and I went looking at the Richmond Squirrels, the Flying Squirrels, offensive stats, and it was depressing, right? Will Wilson, Grant, Von Brown, Grant McRae, like Hunter Bishop, they're not just struggling. They're basically, they're all like, two of them are hitting in the 100s, and this is after like 25 games. It's a sad story out there in Richmond, and it feels almost like a lost generation. And a lot of those guys are 25 years old, and it's like a big, huge gap in the offensive player development. So
on that note, I think they've clearly made pitching their emphasis. They've got guys like Bryce Elbridge, who maybe they're hopeful about. But I guess that comes back to a whole philosophy of what you want your major league team to look like eventually, right? And it seems like they're, and Andrew, this is kind of my question to you: does it seem like they're all in on the pitching and defense side, and hope they can kind of string together a good enough offensive team to kind of be competitive?
I think so. I think that they really leaned into pitching these last couple of years, and they have made some sort of taken some flyers on some guys who really could, if they pan out, could really be star level players. I think Eldridge is one that you look at, and he's started off hot and then cooled down. And you're right, the numbers at Richmond, have been really, really rough. But it's a process, and that Double-A turn, that's kind of what scouts will tell you is you have a Von Brown who looks like he just is an unstoppable force. He's like Mike Trout meets Hunter Pence in the minor leagues, and then you hit that Double-A turn. He's had some injuries, and there's a reason it's not easy. They're not.
Right. Well, it's impossible.
It's basically impossible. Yeah,
it's impossible. Yeah.
I think that one of the best things. One of the most instructive things for baseball fans, and really for us in the media too, are looking at some of those pitch overlays that either Codify does or the Pitching Ninja on whatever that site is that we now call X. And and you see the overlays and the pitches go, they're all tunneling, and then whoop, they go in 4 different ways. Like it's almost like crazy. And Ryan Walker, by the way, is one of the most fun to watch. How much his pitches look exactly the same up until a point where the human eye really can't determine, past that point. And then boom, they just go in 2 crazy directions. So,
well, he's been kind of in the zeitgeist. Yeah. At least the baseball analyst, Pitching Ninja featured him recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if to the average Giants fan, if you're not paying attention to what Ryan Walker has become this year, I mean, what he did last year was great and we all loved it and we all rely on him, but he has reached another level this year and it's unreal.
Yeah.
Like the overlays, like just go out onto Pitching Ninja on Twitter.
His stuff is moving so much that, I mean, he's hitting some batters and he's been a little wild with it too, but it's just, it has never been harder to hit right now than it is right now. And the high velocity is only part of it. I really want to look this up when I have some time, but it seems to me, just sort of anecdotally, I don't think pitchers have ever been better at landing off speed for strikes. And these are lab designed off speed pitches. They're designed to tunnel. They're designed to move in different directions. But to combine that with being able to be in the zone with those pitches, I mean, good luck. It just shows you when you see those overlays. Anytime you're like, how could he have taken that pitch, or how could he have swung and missed? All he's got to do is get the runner over or whatever. Well, hitting is really hard. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
I think that if anything, those Pitching Ninja overlays and stuff are good because they're just a reminder. And honestly, that's something that I will wake up and I will tell myself before I ask a question of any major league player, before I walk in the clubhouse. I'll say to myself 3 times, baseball's a hard game, baseball's a hard game, baseball's a hard game. So, have that in mind anytime you ask a question, when you talk to someone about a slump they're in or something that's not going their way. You always have to have that empathy sort of on the ground floor of anything that you do. Well, not, that's the way I go about it. I don't know if that's the way everyone goes about it, but I try to remind myself of that because I think it's important.
One thing I really want to ask, and I know my brother's pushing me here on the schedule because I can see his mouse moving around on our show notes. But you talked about how baseball is a hard game. Like the San Francisco Giants offense has been struggling. And Matthew and I were at a game. It was Lamont. It was a bobblehead. It was a Camilo Doval's bobblehead day, which I think was the second home game, which is a weird day for a bobblehead day. But it's clear that the Giants are trying to bring the fans in and hoping that the players can keep them there. And that plan is not working out so far. But what we noticed at that game, I think that was a moment where I even yelled it out from behind home plate. I think Tom Murphy was hitting, and I literally told him what was going to happen in the at-bat. And that is like the Giants were looking at a lot of first pitch strikes. And that was happening early. It was happening in the first series, in the first homestand. And it feels like, I mean, I've heard some interviews and talks with Melvin. It sounds like that got on their radar and it was something that they wanted to address on the road trip. Didn't pan out in Boston and Philadelphia, but it sounds like it maybe has started to click in Colorado. Not saying that they weren't trying, but they're just getting the results in Colorado. And my question is like, how often do you guys just stick with the plan because the game is so hard versus realize that they have a problem and make a change? Because it felt like to me that the Giants reacted to that problem too slowly.
Yeah. You know what? It's an interesting conversation. I think a lot of it has to do with, hey, what are our tendencies? Because we know that every team employs a whole bunch of scouts and analysts, and they're picking apart our tendencies. And so in a way, you can be like, okay, we're taking a lot of first pitch strikes. Now, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. If they're pitcher's strikes and you can't really do any damage on that pitch, you let it go. It doesn't help you get count leverage. And I think at least last week, I think the Giants were seeing more 0-1 counts than any team except for maybe the Rockies and Marlins, which is not the kind of company you want to keep.
No.
Wow.
But and a lot of that is Lee. Lee has taken a lot of first pitches because he's learning these pitchers for the first time. So that you understand. And I think he's a guy who's comfortable hitting with 2 strikes with as many
Right.
strikes as you
Well,
can.
he still has one of the best batting averages on the team. You know, like he's a guy who can hit when he's behind.
Yeah,
the
but
count.
if you look at count leverage, obviously when you flip it in your favor, there's nothing that's going to be more predictive of success than whether you have count leverage or not. However, if you also look at numbers on the first pitch, when people put the first pitch into play, I think the league OPS is like 880. So you can do damage on that first pitch. It may be the best pitch you see, and if your opponents have noticed your tendency as a group is to be passive on the first pitch, they're going to get that strike one, and then they're going to have count leverage. And so I think a lot of it has to do with the ebb and flow of understanding what your opponents see as tendencies that you have that they can exploit, and has that become a tendency that teams are exploiting? And yeah, the answer is probably yes. So we need to adjust to that. Okay, then you start hitting.
Right.
And the other thing is their walk rate has not been very robust. It's the first time they're below average in terms of walk rate, I think, since maybe 2019. And we know that, strikeout to walk ratio is a huge part of the Giants' analysis on both sides of the ball. And honestly, I think one of the reasons that they haven't been walking a lot is because, they're not they're behind in the count. And you want to see pitches, you want to draw walks, but hey, if that first pitch is the one that you can do damage on, you have to be ready. You have to be ready to swing the bat. And I think we've seen that, especially in Colorado. I think they got maybe at 5, maybe even 6 hits on the first pitch in the game 2 there in Colorado. So yeah, and you start doing that, and then your opponents will start to adjust the other way, and then maybe they'll try to go a little out of the zone on the first pitch, and then you got to be ready to adjust to that too. So it's just a constant sort of interplay.
Right, it's a constant.
Yeah,
battle.
that's game of adjustments, as they say.
Right. What concerns me is that, a 48-year-old man sitting in his closet sees these things, and then he has to wait for his team to catch up.
If you have connections with the scouting department, Ben's willing. So just shoot his name, Andrew. Next time.
I am willing to make them cocktails and talk baseball.
I can see you
anytime.
walking in the clubhouse, just walk up to like Jorge Soler and say, "Jorge, let me tell you what you're doing wrong." Okay.
Yeah. You're hitting your home runs at the wrong moment, dude. If you hit those when there were 3 guys on,
it counts for 4.
It
counts for 4 points.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So hit your home runs at different times.
Simple. You say baseball's hard. All right. Well, Andrew,
you're giving this away for free. You're giving this information away for free.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we are wrapping up because of the end here. We want to end with a lightning round. So we've got 3 questions for you, Andrew, and you can answer them as succinctly as you want. The first question, since you are a Hall of Fame voter, does Barry Bonds belong in the Hall of Fame?
I voted for him. I voted for him every year. I didn't vote for the guys who've gotten suspended, whether it's A-Rod or Manny Ramirez or Rafael Palmeiro, because if you get suspended, you hurt your team. I'm not going to try to moralize with my vote because we don't know who did what. There are people who are in the Hall of Fame who have juice. There's no doubt in my mind of that. So it's impossible to have a standard you can apply fairly equally to everyone. I just think, baseball created this mess. They didn't, they enjoyed the show. They profited off it until it got just completely ridiculous. And once, Bud Selig was upset that Barry Bonds was going to break the all-time home run record, which was a very cherished friend of his, Hank Aaron, who said it. The steroids worked too well, honestly. They made a mockery of the record books, and that was, probably when baseball had to step in. But they allowed this to happen. So I just think you vote for the best players of every era. That's so I voted for Barry every year. I don't know if he's ever going to get in. I don't know if it's going to have to be a veterans committee, maybe a couple decades from now, when there are players who are on it who maybe even took steroids, and or maybe are a little see the era a little bit differently. But for now, I don't think that he's got a chance. I do think Jeff Kent's going to get in on the next veterans ballot, which is going to be interesting. Yeah,
really?
I think he's going to get in just like McGriff did. But yeah, I've voted for. I guess I should wrap up since it's a lightning round and I'm going too long. But I voted for Barry every year. I voted for Roger Clemens every year. They're off the ballot now, so they won't take up spots on my ballot. But yeah, I voted for him every year.
All right.
Well, it's interesting because, I think Kent was one of the best second basemen of his era. He was a little bit of a late bloomer, didn't really start to show his stuff until he was with the Giants. But
yeah, no.
But yeah.
And his stats,
wow.
I think, kind of measure up to any second baseman in the Hall.
Right. I mean, like, yeah, he's like offensively, he's one of the best second basemen to ever do it.
All right, Andrew, next question for you. Will the Giants make the playoffs this year?
This is it. This is the moment. Here we go. Here we go.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just infotainment.
That's where we are. That's where we don't know. We don't know.
You're just gonna have.
He doesn't know. We don't know.
Stumped
we don't
the
know,
Jeopardy
Matthew.
champion.
We don't know. That's what it is. That's the answer. That is
you know
the
what?
answer.
Honestly,
we don't know.
So many times I'm on social media and people are arguing things, and I'll say, you know what? I just want to tell them it's okay to say I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Don't make up something that you think sounds right. If you don't know something, just say I don't know. And you know what? I don't know. I really don't know if the Giants are good enough to be
that is unsatisfying.
A postseason team.
I am unsatisfied.
I think there's a lot of parity in the National League. I think the Phillies are really good. I think the Braves are really good, and they haven't even gotten hardly anything out of Olsen or Acuna yet. They seem to be weathering their pitching injuries okay. The Dodgers, we all know, are really good. Aside from that, I have no idea. The Rockies are terrible. The Marlins are terrible. The Nationals, are challenged but are getting better.
They're in a playoff spot.
That was my question. My follow-up.
The Pirates are pretty bad too. I thought the Pirates were going to be pretty good, and they got some pitching now, but their offense is really, really bad. So after that, I think it's a complete open book who makes the playoffs.
All right. Final question for you, Andrew. Do you have a favorite cocktail of all time? And if so, what is it?
Oh, wow. Favorite cocktail of all time. Wow.
Like, what's your go-to? Other than when you're sipping on your own Nespolino.
Yeah, that's a good one. Gosh, what would I even go with? You know what? I will bring this one out. So this is sort of a springtime cocktail. Often I will grow sweet snap peas in our garden, and so I make something that I refer to as a pea teeny. I take the peas, I take a little bit of water, a little bit of confectioner's sugar, and put it in a blender. And puree it, or basically liquefy it. I'll also toss in a little, and then I'll strain it out, and I've got this beautiful sort of green liquor. I'll brew some mint in with that, and then I'll strain it again, and I'll use gin. I'll use either a little bit of Lillet or Saint Germain, depending on my how I'm feeling. A little bit of lemon juice, and shake it up. And it's bright green, and it's vegetal, and it's sweet, and it's got a little minty back edge to it, and it is a pea teeny, and that's my favorite cocktail to make.
I love that name. I love the recipe. I love how you described it. This is going to sound weird to you, Andrew, but our listeners will understand. Are you married?
Am I married? I am spoken for. Yes.
Okay.
The other thing that's really fun is you take a pea tendril, it's got all the little sort of viney things on it, and you snip it off, and it makes a perfect garnish to stick on top.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
We bow to your genius, Andrew.
Wow.
That is an amazing cocktail.
Matthew, we got to have more Jeopardy champions on the show.
Note to self, for sure. All right. Well, I think we are at the end of the episode. Just upcoming opponent real quick. We have the Cincinnati Reds coming to town, who are struggling themselves. They are also in fourth place in their division at 16-20 going into Thursday's games. Struggling a little bit. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games. So maybe the Giants have... I was a little worried about the Reds because their type of play tends to give the Giants some trouble, particularly on the base paths. But we'll see. And notable players to play for both teams: Joe Morgan, Johnny Cueto, and 2010 Forever Giant Cody Ross. All played for the Cincinnati Reds.
He didn't play for them, but their current manager. Their current manager scored the run that sent them to the 2002 World Series. David Bell.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? There's a photo of that moment somewhere in the Giants clubhouse, and Matt Morris started that game for the Cardinals. Steve Klein gave up the hit, and all those guys became Giants. All of them became Giants. So it's kind of funny. Kenny Lofton, of course, got the hit, and he was the Giant for the shortest amount of time of all those guys. And yeah, you're right. Yeah. David Bell's the one who scored it, and that sent him to a World Series. And I forgot what happened in that World Series.
It was fine. It was fine. I was at that game, and I remember I think there were 2 outs, and David Bell came to the plate, and there was a woman standing next to me, and she says to me, "Oh, it's David Bell." this is it. He always makes things happen. It's going to happen now. And she was right. And I don't know who she was. I don't know where she went, but she was right.
The prophet had spoken.
That's right. That's right.
Sometimes you just know.
All right. Well, there we go. Andrew Baggarly, Senior Writer of The Athletic. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a lot of fun, and really appreciate you spending some time with us.
We will be back
on
Monday with the big
I
show.
enjoyed it too.
Where
I'm
the
going to put 2 extra
will be
Luxardos in every
stronger
cocktail from now
and
on.
the rants will
All
be
right.
longer.
Our work here is
Can't
done.
wait that long to get your
All right.
fix.
Thanks, guys. I
Feel
appreciate
free
it.
to reach out to us on the social
All right.
medias.
Thanks, Andrew. Take
you
care.
can find us in Zuckland, a.k.a. Instagram and Threads, where we go by the username @GiantCocktails. You can also find us on the Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, and Mastodon at the same username. Don't forget, you can also listen to us on YouTube, so run over there to like, subscribe, and comment. But most importantly, be sure to leave us a positive review. Like 5 stars positive. If it's not 5 stars, it's not positive. At your podcasting platform of choice, a.k.a. Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Matthew, since you're not here, I'm going to be totally honest. You were pretty good today. And Andrew, you were amazing today. Thank you so much for being on the show. And both of you, keep up the good work. Cheers, my friends. Until next time, this is me saying goodbye as if I was Matthew.
Oh, goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Giant Cocktails Podcast. Until next time, bottoms up.